Mr. Speaker, every home bought by fraudsters is one less home that Canadians can buy. It's basic demand and supply. All else being the same, when demand increases, naturally prices go up. And when there's less supply, prices also go up. So in the GTA and many real estate markets across Canada, we see not only increasing demand as our country continues to receive from immigration, but now the alarming allegations of mortgage fraud where fraudsters are buying up homes and in turn reducing supply. This double whammy, Mr. Speaker, of increased demand and decreased supply due to fraud has made home ownership so out of reach that in Toronto, people will have to save on average for 26 years, Mr. Speaker, for a down payment. That is a quarter of a century. That's why I asked the Prime Minister on February 7th about the incidents of very significant alleged mortgage fraud being conducted at a major Canadian bank. I had mentioned unbelievable evidence of a person living in Canada having no income or employment, somehow still able to obtain HSBC mortgages to purchase not one, not two, not three, but at least 4 homes, simply based on a fake statement that the individual had equally fake high incomes from employment in China. Mr. Speaker, that astounding information was lost on the Prime Minister, who either did not understand the question or simply did not care to address the issue of mortgage fraud. So then I asked how the government could make more housing available and affordable to Canadians when fraudsters are out there buying them up, buying multiple homes that in turn create housing scarcity and drive up house prices. Mr. Speaker, I would have liked to have been told that the government is aware of the issue and is doing something to address the damage created by money laundering and mortgage fraud in Canada. But instead, the Prime Minister seemed more interested in waxing poetically on the foreign ownership ban. Given housing unavailability, unaffordability, and record high interest rates, it's a little late in the game for the Prime Minister to be suggesting that the government is stepping up on housing and will continue to do while the Conservatives have no plan. Quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, Canadians at this point don't care which party has a plan as long as it works. And unfortunately, the Liberal plan has been failing. Home ownership is out of reach for so many Canadians. And even if they found a home, they couldn't afford it. To top it off, Mr. Speaker, we have money launderers and mortgage fraudsters adding fuel to real estate markets, especially those in urban markets. And they're gobbling up multiple homes under false pretenses. In one case, Mr. Speaker, a casino worker owned 3 homes, claiming to earn $345,000. In another, someone somehow had $10,000 in student loans that they still owed, but claiming to earn $700,000 annually working remotely in China. The most incomprehensible one was the one that I cited to the Prime Minister of an individual with no income or employment somehow financed to own 4 homes. Just from these 3 examples, Mr. Speaker, that's 8 homes less for Canadians. And that might not matter to the Prime Minister, but it sure does for Canadians struggling to find a home. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, I have to ask, yet again, how can the Prime Minister make housing more available and more affordable when he and his government are turning a blind eye to money laundering and mortgage fraud in Canada? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would disagree entirely with what it is that the member is trying to give in terms of an impression which is just not even remotely close to the reality of the situation. For example, I would challenge the member to cite a Prime Minister in the last 50, 60 years that has done more in terms of investing in housing in all sorts of ways, not only financial commitments, but we've seen other budgetary issues where we have attempted to deal with issues such as fraud and foreign ownership. We understand and very much appreciate and value the importance of being able to own a home, Mr. Speaker, and that's why this government, like no other government in the last number of decades, has made the decision, and this isn't just something that's in the last 20 24 hours, Mr. Speaker. This is a decision that was made years ago, shortly after being in government, back in 2015-16, Mr. Speaker, where we consciously said that as a national government, we want to be proactive in dealing with housing going forward. We brought forward the first ever national housing strategy. But it's important that we recognize, Mr. Speaker, that it is not just the national government's responsibility. We can lead, in which we have, both financially and legislatively, and reached out to the many different stakeholders. We need the stakeholders also to come to the table, Mr. Speaker, and we are seeing that. We are seeing literally hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in working with mayors and working with other jurisdictions to ensure that we can increase the housing supply. Mr. Speaker, I'm a little bit concerned when the member talked about the issue of immigration. I do not believe we should even attempt to blame the issue on immigrants. At the end of the day, you will find whether it's provincial governments or the national government, we have recognized and believe in the power of immigrants and how they have lifted all of us higher, Mr. Speaker, and it is in good part something that we will continue to work with other jurisdictions. So I don't like the tie-in to immigrants on the issue of the frauds. This is a government that has recognized the issue, and we are working with others to resolve it, but most importantly, recognizing that the national government's lead in ensuring that we have more housing, more affordable housing, Mr. Speaker, because we understand the importance of it. But unlike the Conservatives, we will work with other jurisdictions. We're not going to go around saying, you're a bad mayor, you're a bad mayor, you're a bad mayor. Oh, well, I haven't heard him say anything good about mayors, Mr. Speaker, but I think it is important that we recognize that we do need to work with other jurisdictions because often it's the councils, or in some areas, the provinces that actually have more tools than we would have outside of, let's say, financial supports.
The honourable member from Spadina, Fort York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have to give it to the parliamentary secretary to hone in on the one word of immigrants and try to spin it off as some sort of xenophobia. I am the son of immigrants. I'm the son of refugees. It is simply stating a fact that as immigration increases, if the housing supply isn't there, there's more demand and there's pressure for the housing prices to go up. Now, the parliamentary secretary speaks about reality, that no one has done more than this government. Well, let me tell him about the reality. Let's accept what he has said at face value. The reality is it takes 26 years for a Torontonian to be able to save up enough for a down payment for a home. Is that the best that they got? Is that the plan working for them? Is that success for the Liberal government? Give me a break. So I ask again, how are you actually going to address housing unaffordability, unavailability, and record high interest rates so the dream of home ownership can actually be possible? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the government is very much concerned about the cost and affordability of housing, and that's one of the reasons why it's imperative that the government work with the Government of Canada, continue to work with municipalities and provinces in particular, but also non-profit organizations that are out there. I'm a big fan, for example, of Habitat for Humanity. Without that particular organization, there are literally hundreds of people in the city of Winnipeg alone that would never have had the opportunity to own a home, Mr. Speaker. They do a lot of good work. There's a number of advocates that are out there and organizations to give that helping hand. I think that we need to work collectively to try to make things more affordable. All I can tell the member is the Government of Canada is at the table, and we're going to do what we can.